So hello everybody. Welcome to my stream tonight. I tried to do a little something different. I thought the music was a nice touch. I hope you agree. I love music. I love listening to music. So instead of just jumping right in, I thought we'd start with a little music, a little fun, a little happiness. Hope you don't mind. And so I was exhausted yesterday, and today was kind of a long day at work. So I'm not going to read The Art of War today. It's just a lot of work to read that. So I decided I would go to what I wanted to read normally. It's just some books for relaxing and having fun and enjoying each other's company, getting to know each other. So today we are going to read Winnie the Pooh. We'll just read a chapter just for fun. I am not going to give up on Art of War. I'm just not going to read it today. But we will catch up with it, and you can always catch up on my YouTube channel to get all the videos so we can finish reading it. And I do want to finish reading it, but I wanted just a little bit of light reading today. And in the United States, Winnie the Pooh just got released into the public domain, so I can use it. Yay! So, like I said, I think I mentioned last time, I've watched Winnie the Pooh, the little cartoons or the animated, but I've never actually read the whole book. So we'll take a stab at it. We'll read a little bit of it and see what it's like. Maybe, hopefully, a little bit more relaxing. So feel free to come in, sit down, get comfy. This will be like our little reading room. People don't read much anymore. And if we do, it's always like at desks or something uncomfy. And, in the United States, a long time ago, people used to have reading rooms. They would actually call it a reading room. When I was growing up, ours was called the living room. And it's where you would go and you would sit and you would read. And families used to get together and read, and we don't do that as much anymore, and so I'm hoping to maybe kind of bring that back, let us read together, sit together, spend some time together, and go ahead and read. Just because reading is good for you. It's good for your brain. It helps you, it helps your brain, your creativity, helps you think. Reading brings people together. It's all kinds of fun. So I love to read. I don't read as much as I should, but I'm hoping that this year we can change things. And I thank you. I'm so excited that you're here with me to read with me. I think it'll be fun. Hopefully we'll learn a lot and have some fun together. So I went ahead and picked Winnie the Pooh. I tried to do a what is it called? A poll. I tried to do a poll. I didn't do very good with it. So I just had to pick. And between Winnie the Pooh and Agatha Christie, I think with Agatha Christie you have to read the whole thing because it's a mystery and you've got to find out what happened. But with Winnie the Pooh, a lot of these chapters just kind of stand alone. So we can just read them one at a time whenever we need a break. And that will be awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the music here. Where's my music? There's my music. I'm going to stop the music. Yay. Well, I thought I stopped the music. It's still playing. Oh, there we go. So I'm going to stop the music. And we are going to go ahead and start reading. So I don't have my transitions down, so everybody just close your eyes for like a second and then open them up again and we'll be there. Like, ready? 1, 2, 3, close your eyes. Boing! Okay, here we are. Yay! So that was such a smooth transition, wasn't it? So here we are, Chapter 1. Chapter 1, in which we are introduced to Winnie the Pooh and some bees, and the stories begin. Let me back up a page here so you can see. There's the picture. So this has, I went ahead and downloaded the Winnie the Pooh that was written like as an ebook. So it has all the cool pictures. Yay! So this is the chapter. This is the table of contents. We're going to read Chapter 1 today. This is, whoops, where'd it go? Come back here. Here we go. Drawn by me and Mr. Shepherd helped. So this is the map of Winnie the Pooh's world. So there's Pooh Bear's house. Nice for picnics. The bee tree. My house. Rabbit's friends. Owl's house. 100-acre woods. So this is really cool little ebook. I will, when I put up the YouTube video, I will try and go ahead and give you a link to where you can download this for free if you wanted to read along. I got this one from the Gutenberg Project, which has a lot of public domain works available. So I'll probably be pulling some others from there as well. It's a great place to go and get some free books. And you can download them as, some of them can be done as PDFs, some can be done as ebooks. They'll work on your Kindles or on other kinds of readers. It's great. So, and here's the little illustration. And now we will start. Chapter 1, in which we are introduced to Winnie the Pooh and some bees, and the stories begin. Here is Edward Bear, coming downstairs now. Bump, 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 on the back of his head behind Christopher Robin. It is, as far as he knows, the only way of coming downstairs. But sometimes he feels that there really is another way, if only he could stop bumping for a moment and think of it. And then he feels perhaps there isn't. Anyhow, here he is at the bottom, and ready to be introduced to you. Winnie the Pooh. When I first heard his name, I said, just as you are going to say, but I thought he was a boy. So did I, said Christopher Robin. Then you can't call him Winnie. I don't. But you said, he's Winnie the Pooh. Don't you know what "there" means? Ah, yes, now I do, I said quickly, and I hope you do too, because that is all the explanation you are going to get. Sometimes Winnie the Pooh likes a game of some sort when he comes downstairs, and sometimes he likes to sit quietly in front of the fire and listen to a story. This evening, what about a story? Said Christopher Robin. What about a story? I said. Could you very sweetly tell Winnie the Pooh one? I suppose I could, I said. What sort of stories does he like? About himself, because he's that sort of bear. Oh, I see. So, could you very sweetly? I'll try, I said. So I tried. Once upon a time, a very long time ago now, about last Friday, Winnie the Pooh lived in a forest all by himself under the name of Sanders. Aw, there's Winnie the Pooh. What does under the name mean? Asked Christopher Robin. It means he had the name over the door in gold letters and lived under it. Winnie the Pooh wasn't quite sure, said Christopher Robin. Now I am, said a growly voice. Then I will go on, said I. One day, when he was out walking, he came to an open place in the middle of the forest. And in the middle of this place was a large oak tree. And from the top of the tree there came a loud buzzing noise. Winnie the Pooh sat down at the foot of the tree, put his head between his paws, and began to think. First of all, he said to himself, that buzzing noise means something. You don't get a buzzing noise like that, just buzzing and buzzing without it meaning something. If there's a buzzing noise, somebody's making a buzzing noise. And the only reason for making a buzzing noise that I know of is because you're a bee. Then he thought another long time and said, and the only reason for being a bee that I know of is making honey. And then he got up and said, and the only reason for making honey is so as I can eat it. So he began to climb the tree. There he goes up the tree. I love these old illustrations. He climbed and he climbed and he climbed. And as he climbed, he sang a little song to himself. It went like this. Isn't it funny how a bear likes honey? Buzz, 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 I wonder why he does. Then he climbed a little further, and a little further, and then just a little further. By that time, he had thought of another song. It's a very funny thought that if bears were bees, they'd build their nests at the bottom of trees. And that being so, if the bees were bears, we shouldn't have to climb up all these stairs. He was getting rather tired by this time, so that is why he sang a complaining song. He was nearly there now, and if he just stood on that branch, crack! Oh, help! Said Pooh, as he dropped 10 feet on the branch below him. Oh, there he goes. Poor Pooh Bear. If only I hadn't, he said, as he bounced 20 feet onto the next branch. You see, what I meant to do, he explained, as he turned head over heels and crashed onto another branch 30 feet below. What I meant to do. Of course it was rather, he admitted, as he slithered very quickly through the next 6 branches. It all comes, I suppose, he decided, as he said goodbye to the last branch, spun round 3 times, and flew gracefully into a gorse bush. It all comes of liking honey so much. Oh, help! He crawled out of the gorse bush, brushed the prickles from his nose, and began to think again. And the first person he thought of was Christopher Robin. Was that me? Said Christopher Robin in an odd voice, hardly daring to believe it. That was you. Christopher Robin said nothing, but his eyes got larger and larger, and his face got pinker and pinker. So Winnie the Pooh went round to his friend Christopher Robin, who lived behind a green door in another part of the forest. Good morning, Christopher Robin, he said. Good morning, Winnie the Pooh, said you. I wonder if you've got such a thing as a balloon about you. A balloon? Yes. I just said to myself coming along, I wonder if Christopher Robin has such a thing as a balloon about him. I just said it to myself, thinking of balloons and wondering. "What do you want a balloon for?" you said. Winnie the Pooh looked round to see that nobody was listening, put his paw to his mouth, and said in a deep whisper, "Honey." "But you don't get honey with balloons." "I do," said Pooh. "Well, it just happened that you had been to a party the day before at the house of your friend Piglet, and you had balloons at the party. You had had a big green balloon, and one of Rabbit's relations had had a big blue one, and had left it behind, being really too young to go to the party at all. And so you brought the green one and the blue one home with you. Which one would you like?" asked Pooh. You asked Pooh. He put his head between his paws and thought very carefully. "It's like this," he said. "When you go after honey with a balloon, the great thing is not to let the bees know you're coming. Now, if you have a green balloon, they might think you were only part of the tree and not notice you. And if you have a blue balloon, they might think you were only part of the sky and not notice you. And the question is, which is most likely?" "Wouldn't they notice you underneath the balloon?" you asked. "They might or they might not," said Winnie the Pooh. "You never can tell with bees." He thought for a moment and said, "I shall try to look like a small black cloud. That will deceive them." "Then you had better have the blue balloon," you said, and so it was decided. Well, you both went out with the blue balloon, and you took your gun with you just in case, as you always did. And Winnie the Pooh went to a very muddy place that he knew of, and rolled until he was black all over. And then, when the balloon was blown up as big, and you and Pooh were both holding on to the string, you let go suddenly, and Pooh Bear floated gracefully up into the sky and stayed there, level with the top of the tree and about 20 feet away from it. "Hooray!" you shouted. "Isn't that fine?" shouted Winnie the Pooh. Down to you. What do I look like?" "You look like a bear holding on to a balloon," you said. "Not," said Pooh anxiously, "not like a small black cloud in a blue sky?" "Not very much." "Ah, well, perhaps from up here it looks different. And, as I say, you never can tell with bees." There was no wind to blow him nearer to the tree, so there he stayed. He could see the honey, he could smell the honey, but he couldn't quite reach the honey. After a little while, he called down to you. "Christopher Robin," he said in a loud whisper. "Hello? I think the bees suspect something." "What sort of thing?" "I don't know, but something tells me that they're suspicious." "Perhaps they think that you're after their honey." "It may be that. You never can tell with bees." There was another little silence, and then he called down to you again. "Christopher Robin." "Yes?" "Have you an umbrella in your house?" "I think so." "I wish you would bring it out here and walk up and down with it, and look up at me every now and then and say, 'Tut, tut, it looks like rain.' I think if you did that, it would help the deception which we are practicing on these bees." "Well," you laughed to yourself, "silly old bear. But you didn't say it aloud because you were so fond of him, and you went home for your umbrella. Whoops. There we go. "Oh, there you are!" called down Winnie the Pooh as soon as you got back to the tree. "I was beginning to get anxious. I have discovered that the bees are now definitely suspicious." "Shall I put my umbrella up?" you said. "Yes, but wait a moment. We must be practical. The important bee to deceive is the queen bee. Can you see which is the queen bee from down there? No? A pity. Well now, if you walk up and down with your umbrella saying, 'Tut, tut, it looks like rain,' I shall do what I can by singing a little cloud song, such as a cloud might sing. Go." So, while you walked up and down and wondered if it would rain, Winnie the Pooh sang this song. "How sweet to be a cloud, floating in the blue. Every little cloud always sings aloud. How sweet to be a cloud, floating in the blue. It makes him very proud to be a little cloud." The bees were still buzzing as suspiciously as ever. Some of them indeed left their nests and flew all round the cloud as it began the second verse of this song. And one bee sat down on the nose of the cloud for a moment and then got up again. "Christopher, ow! Robin!" called out the cloud. "Yes?" "I have just been thinking, and I have come to a very important decision. These are the wrong sort of bees." "Are they?" "Quite the wrong sort. So I should think they would make the wrong sort of honey, shouldn't you?" "Would they?" "Yes. So I think I shall come down." "How?" asked you. Winnie the Pooh hadn't thought about this. If he let go of the string, he would fall. Bump! And he didn't like the idea of that. So he thought for a long time, and then he said, "Christopher Robin, you must shoot the balloon with your gun. Have you got your gun?" "Of course I have," you said. "But if I do that, it will spoil the balloon," you said. "But if you don't," said Pooh, "I shall have to let go, and that would spoil me." When he put it like this, you saw how it was, and you aimed very carefully at the balloon and fired. "Ow!" said Pooh. "Did I miss?" you asked. "You didn't exactly miss," said Pooh, "but you missed the balloon." "I'm so sorry," said you, and fired again. And this time you hit the balloon, and the air came slowly out, and Winnie the Pooh floated down to the ground. But his arms were so stiff from holding on to the string of the balloon all that time that they stayed up straight in the air for more than a week. And whenever a fly came and settled on his nose, he had to blow it off. And I think, but I am not sure, that that is why he was always called Pooh. "Is that the end of the story?" asked Christopher Robin. "That's the end of that one. There are others. About Pooh and me, and Piglet and Rabbit and all of you. Don't you remember?" "I do remember, and then when I try to remember, I forget." That day when Pooh and Piglet tried to catch the heffalump, they didn't catch it, did they? No. Pooh couldn't because he hasn't any brain. Did I catch it? Well, that comes into the story. Christopher Robin nodded. I do remember, he said, only Pooh doesn't very well. So that's why he likes having it told to him again. Because then it's a real story and not just a remembering. That's just how I feel, I said. Christopher Robin gave a deep sigh, picked up Bear by the leg, and walked off to the door, trailing Pooh behind him. At the door he turned and said, Coming to see me have my bath? I might, I said. I didn't hurt him when I shot him, did I? Not a bit. He nodded and went out, and in a moment I heard Winnie the Pooh bump, 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 going up the stairs behind him. So that's chapter 1. Yay! This was so much easier on my brain than reading the other story. And we'll go ahead and read another chapter because it's nice and relaxing, and might even read a third chapter depending on how smoothly this goes or how long this chapter is. But this is more what I wanted to do. This is what I wanted. Just some nice relaxed reading. It's important to learn, and I think we're going to kind of mix it up with the thinking books and the relaxing books so that we can kind of do both and get a lot of reading in. So, chapter 2, in which Pooh goes visiting and gets into a tight place. Don't be afraid to say hello. Click the follow button so you can kind of keep up with what I do. I'll be posting a poll probably tomorrow once I get my schedule a little bit better, and we can go ahead and pick another other book. But we're still going to continue to read Art of War, but this is just our nice little break. So here we are, Chapter 2 of Winnie the Pooh. Edward Bear, known to his friends as Winnie the Pooh, or Pooh for short, was walking through the forest one day, humming proudly to himself. He had made up a little hum that very morning, as he was doing his stoutness exercises in front of the glass. Tra-la-la, tra-la-la, as he stretched up as high as he could go. Then tra-la-la, tra-la, oh help, la, as he tried to reach his toes. After breakfast he had said it over and over to himself until he had learnt it off by heart, and now he was humming it right through, properly. It went like this. Tra-la-la, 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 rum-tum, tiddle-lum-tum, tiddle-little, 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 rum-tum, tiddle-lum. Aw, there's Pooh Bear. I love these. They just make me happy. Well, he was humming this to himself and walking along gaily, wondering what everybody else was doing, and what it felt like, being somebody else, when suddenly he came to a sandy bank, and in the bank was a large hole. Aha, said Pooh. Rum-tum, tiddle-lum-tum. If I know anything about anything, that hole means rabbit, he said. And rabbit means company, he said. And company means food and listening to me humming and such like rum-tum-tum-tiddle-lum. So he bent down, put his head into the hole, and called out, Is anybody home? There was a sudden scuffling noise from inside the hole, and then silence. What I said was, Is anybody at home? called out Pooh very loudly. No, said a voice, and then added, You needn't shout so loud. I heard you quite well the first time. Bother, said Pooh. Isn't there anybody here at all? Nobody. Winnie the Pooh took his head out of the hole and thought for a little. And he thought to himself, There must be somebody there, because somebody must have said nobody. So he put his head back in the hole and said, Hello, Rabbit. Isn't that you? No, said Rabbit, in a different sort of voice this time. But isn't that Rabbit's voice? I don't think so, said Rabbit. It isn't meant to be. Oh, said Pooh. He took his head out of the hole and had another think, and then he put it back and said, Well, could you very kindly tell me where Rabbit is? He has gone to see his friend Pooh Bear, who is a great friend of his. But this is me, said Bear, very much surprised. What sort of me? Pooh Bear. Are you sure? Said Rabbit, still more surprised. Quite sure, said Pooh. Oh, well, then come in. So Pooh pushed and pushed and pushed his way through the hole, and at last he got in. You were quite right, said Rabbit, looking at him all over. It is you. Glad to see you. Who did you think it was? Well, I wasn't sure. You know how it is in the forest. One can't have anybody coming into one's house. One has to be careful. What about a mouthful of something? Pooh always liked a little something at 11 o'clock in the morning, and he was very glad to see Rabbit getting out the plates and mugs. And when Rabbit said, Honey or condensed milk with your bread, he was so excited that he said both. And then, so as not to seem greedy, he added, But don't bother about the bread, please. And for a long time after that he said nothing, until at last, humming to himself in a rather sticky voice, he got up, shook Rabbit lovingly by the paw, and said that he must be going. Must you? Said Rabbit politely. Well, said Pooh. I could stay a little longer if you... And he tried very hard to look in the direction of the larder. As a matter of fact, said Rabbit, I was going out myself directly. Oh, well then, I'll be going on. Goodbye. Well, goodbye, if you're sure you won't have any more. Is there any more? Asked Pooh quickly. Rabbit took the covers off the dishes. No, there wasn't. I thought not, said Pooh, nodding to himself. Well, goodbye, I must be going on. Sorry, I'm forgetting to move my cursor with the words if you're reading along. I'll try and do better. So he started to climb out of the hole. He pulled with his front paws and pushed with his back paws. And in a little while, his nose was out in the open again. And then his ears, and then his front paws, and then his shoulders, and then... Oh, help, said Pooh. I'd better go back. Oh, bother, said Pooh. I shall have to go on. I can't do either, said Pooh. Oh, help and bother. Now, by this time, Rabbit wanted to go for a walk too, and finding the front door full, he went out by the back door and came round to Pooh and looked at him. "Hello, are you stuck?" he asked. No, said Pooh carelessly. "Just resting and thinking and humming to myself. Here, give us a paw." Pooh Bear stretched out a paw, and Rabbit pulled and pulled and pulled. "Ow!" cried Pooh. "You're hurting." "The fact is," said Rabbit, "you're stuck." "It all comes," said Pooh crossly, "of not having front doors big enough." "It all comes," said Rabbit sternly, "of eating too much. I thought at the time," said Rabbit. "Only I didn't like to say anything," said Rabbit. "That one of us was eating too much," said Rabbit. "And I knew it wasn't me," he said. "Well, well, I shall go and fetch Christopher Robin." Christopher Robin lived at the other end of the forest, and when he came back with Rabbit and saw the front half of Pooh, he said, "Silly old bear," in such a loving voice that everybody felt quite hopeful again. "I was just beginning to think," said Bear, sniffing slightly, "that Rabbit might never be able to use his front door again, and I should hate that," he said. "So should I," said Rabbit. "Use his front door again," said Christopher Robin. "Of course he'll use his front door again." "Good," said Rabbit. "If we can't pull you out, Pooh, we might push you back." Rabbit scratched his whiskers thoughtfully and pointed out that, when once Pooh was pushed back, he was back, and of course nobody was more glad to see Pooh than he was. Still, there it was. Some lived in trees, and some lived underground, and... "You mean I never get out?" said Pooh. "I mean," said Rabbit, "that having got so far, it seems a pity to waste it." Christopher Robin nodded. "Then there's only one thing to be done," he said. "We shall have to wait for you to get thin again." "How long does getting thin take?" asked Pooh anxiously. "About a week, I should think." "But I can't stay here for a week." "You can stay here all right, silly old bear. It's getting you out which is so difficult." "We'll read to you," said Rabbit cheerfully. "And I hope it won't snow," he added. "And I say, old fellow, you're taking up a good deal of room in my house. Do you mind if I use your back legs as a towel horse? Because, I mean, there they are, doing nothing, and it would be very convenient just to hang towels on them." "A week?" said Pooh gloomily. "What about meals?" "I'm afraid no meals," said Christopher Robin, "because of getting thin quicker. But we will read to you." Bear began to sigh, and then found he couldn't because he was so tightly stuck, and a tear rolled down his eye as he said, "Then would you read a sustaining book, such as would help and comfort a wedged bear in great tightness?" So, for a week, Christopher Robin read that sort of book at the north end of Pooh, and Rabbit hung his washing on the south end. And in between, Bear felt himself getting slenderer and slenderer. And at the end of the week, Christopher Robin said, "Now." So he took hold of Pooh's front paws, and Rabbit took hold of Christopher Robin, and all Rabbit's friends and relations took a hold of Rabbit, and they all pulled together. And for a long time Pooh only said, "Ow!" and "Oh!" And then all of a sudden he said, "Pop!" as if a corkscrew were coming out of a bottle. I'm just looking at all these cute little animals holding the rabbits, the hedgehog. So cute. And Christopher Robin and Rabbit and all Rabbit's friends and relations went head over heels backwards. And on top of them came Winnie the Pooh. Free! So, with a nod of thanks to his friends, he went on with his walk through the forest, humming proudly to himself. But Christopher Robin looked after him lovingly and said to himself, "Silly old bear." I think we have time for one more chapter. So we'll go ahead and, read chapter 3 here. Let me just, readjust myself for chapter 3. Whoops. Alrighty. So, whoops, I think I lost. Where'd this go? There we go. Okay. I moved it just a little too much there. Okay. So, chapter 3. Whoops. In which Pooh and Piglet go hunting and nearly catch a woozle. The piglet lived in a very grand house in the middle of a beech tree, and the beech tree was in the middle of the forest, and the piglet lived in the middle of the house. Next to his house was a piece of broken board which had "Trespassers W" on it. When Christopher Robin asked the piglet what it meant, he said it was his grandfather's name and had been in the family for a long time. Whoops. Christopher Robin said you couldn't be called Trespassers W, and Piglet said yes, you could, because his grandfather was, and it was short for Trespassers Will, which was short for Trespassers William, and his grandfather had 2 names in case he lost one, Trespassers after an uncle, and William after Trespassers. "I've got 2 names," said Christopher Robin carelessly. "Well, there you are. That proves it," said Piglet. One fine winter's day, when Piglet was brushing away the snow in front of his house, he happened to look up, and there was Winnie the Pooh. Pooh was walking round and round in a circle, thinking of something else, when Piglet called to him. He just went on walking. Oops. My mouse is going crazy here. "Hello," said Piglet. "What are you doing?" "Hunting," said Pooh. "Hunting what?" "Tracking something," said Winnie the Pooh, very mysteriously. "Tracking what?" said Piglet, coming in closer. "That's just what I ask myself. I ask myself, what?" "What do you think you'll answer?" "I shall have to wait until I catch up with it," said Winnie the Pooh. "Now, look here." He pointed to the ground in front of him. What do you see there?" "Tracks," said Piglet. "Paw marks!" He gave a little squeak of excitement. "Oh, Pooh, do you think it's a woozle?" "It may be," said Pooh. "Sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. You never can tell with paw marks." With these few words he went on tracking, and Piglet, after watching him for a minute or two, ran after him. Winnie the Pooh had come to a sudden stop and was bending over the tracks in a puzzled sort of way. "What's the matter?" asked Piglet. "It's a very funny thing," said Bear, "but there seem to be two animals now. This, whatever it was, has been joined by another, whatever it is, and the two of them are now proceeding in company. Would you mind coming with me, Piglet, in case they turn out to be hostile animals?" Piglet scratched his ear in a nice sort of way, and said that he had nothing to do until Friday, and would be delighted to come in case it really was a woozle. "You mean in case it really is two woozles," said Winnie the Pooh, and Piglet said that anyhow he had nothing to do until Friday, so they went off together. And there they go. There was a small spinney of larch trees just here, and it seemed as if the two woozles, if that is what they were, had been going round the spinney. So round the spinney went Pooh and Piglet after them, Piglet passing the time by telling Pooh what his grandfather Trespassers W had done to remove stiffness after tracking, and how his grandfather Trespassers W had suffered in his later years from shortness of breath and other matters of interest, and Pooh wondering what a grandfather was like, and if perhaps this was two grandfathers they were after now, and if so, whether he would be allowed to take one home and keep it, and what Christopher Robin would say. And still the tracks went on in front of them. Suddenly Winnie the Pooh stopped and pointed excitedly in front of him. "Look!" "What?" said Piglet with a jump, and then, to show that he hadn't been frightened, he jumped up and down once or twice more in an exercising sort of way. "The tracks," said Pooh. "A third animal has joined the other two." "Pooh!" cried Piglet. "Do you think that it is another woozle?" "No," said Pooh, "because it makes different marks. It is either two woozles, and one, as it might be, wizzle, or two, as it might be, wizzles and one, if so it is woozle. Let us continue to follow them." So they went on, feeling just a little anxious now, in case the three animals in front of them were of hostile intent. And Piglet wished very much that his grandfather T.W. were there instead of elsewhere, and Pooh thought how nice it would be if they met Christopher Robin, suddenly but quite accidentally, and only because he liked Christopher Robin so much. And then, all of a sudden, Winnie the Pooh stopped again and licked the tip of his nose in a cooling manner, for he was feeling more hot and anxious than ever in his life before. There were 4 animals in front of them. "Do you see, Piglet? Look at their tracks. 3, as it were, woozles, and 1, as it was, wizzle. Another woozle has joined them." And so it seemed to be. There were the tracks, crossing each other crossing over each other here, getting muddled up with each other over there, but quite plainly every now and then the tracks of 4 sets of paws. "I think," said Piglet, when he had licked the tip of his nose too, and found that it brought very little comfort, "I think that I have just remembered something. I have just remembered something that I forgot to do yesterday and shan't be able to do tomorrow. I suppose I really ought to go back and do it now." "We'll do it this afternoon, and I'll come with you," said Pooh. "It isn't the sort of thing you can do in the afternoon," said Piglet quickly. "It's a very particular morning thing that has to be done in the morning. And if possible between the hours of— what would you say the time was?" "About 12, said Winnie the Pooh, looking at the sun. "Between, as I was saying, the hours of 12 and 12:05. So really, dear old Pooh, if you'll excuse me—" "What's that?" Pooh looked up at the sky, and then, as he heard the whistle again, he looked up into the branches of a big oak tree, and then he saw a friend of his. "It's Christopher Robin," he said. "And then you'll be all right," said Piglet. "You'll be quite safe with him. Goodbye." And he trotted off home as quickly as he could, very glad to be out of all danger again. Christopher Robin came slowly down his tree. "Silly old bear," he said. "What were you doing? First, you went round the spinney twice by yourself, and then Piglet ran after you, and you went round again together. And then you were just going round a 4th time—" "Wait a moment," said Winnie the Pooh, holding up his paw. He sat down and thought, in the most thoughtful way he could think. Then he fitted his paw into one of the tracks. And then he scratched his nose twice and stood up. "Yes," said Winnie the Pooh. "I see now," said Winnie the Pooh. "I have been foolish and deluded," said he, "and I am a bear of no brain at all." "You're the best bear in all the world," said Christopher Robin soothingly. "Am I?" said Pooh hopefully, and then he brightened up suddenly. "Anyhow," he said, "it is nearly luncheon time." So he went home for it. We'll read, I guess chapter 4 will be the last one we read today. Chapter 4, in which Eeyore loses a tail and Pooh finds one. The old gray donkey, Eeyore, stood by himself in a thistly corner of the forest, his front feet well apart, his head on one side, and thought about things. Sometimes he thought sadly to himself, "Why?" And sometimes he thought, "Wherefore?" And sometimes he thought, "Inasmuch as which?" And sometimes he didn't quite know what he was thinking about. So when Winnie the Pooh came stumping along, Eeyore was very glad to be able to stop thinking for a little in order to say, "How do you do?" in a gloomy manner to him. "And how are you?" said Winnie the Pooh. Eeyore shook his head from side to side. "Not very how," he said. "I don't seem to have felt at all how for a long time." "Dear, dear," said Pooh. "I'm sorry about that. Let's have a look at you." So Eeyore stood there, gazing sadly at the ground, and Winnie the Pooh walked all round him once. "Why, what's happened to your tail?" he said in surprise. "What has happened to it?" said Eeyore. "It isn't there." "Are you sure?" "Well, either a tail is there or it isn't there. You can't make a mistake about it, and yours isn't there." "Then what is?" "Nothing." "Let's have a look," said Eeyore, and he turned slowly round to the place where his tail had been a little while ago. And then, finding that he couldn't catch it up, he turned round the other way, until he came back to where he was at first, and then he put his head down and looked between his front legs, and at last he said, with a long, sad sigh, "I believe you're right." "Of course I'm right," said Pooh. "That accounts for a good deal," said Eeyore gloomily. "It explains everything. No wonder." "You must have left it somewhere," said Winnie the Pooh. "Somebody must have taken it," said Eeyore. "How like them," he added after a long silence. Pooh felt that he ought to say something helpful about it, but didn't quite know what. So he decided to do something helpful instead. "Eeyore," he said solemnly, "I, Winnie the Pooh, will find your tail for you." "Thank you, Pooh," answered Eeyore. "You're a real friend," he said. Said he. "Not like some," he said. So Winnie the Pooh went off to find Eeyore's tail. It was a fine spring morning in the forest as he started out. Little soft clouds played happily in a blue sky, skipping from time to time in front of the sun, as if they had come to put it out, and then sliding away suddenly so that the next might have his turn. Through them and between them the sun shone bravely, and a copse which had worn its furs all the year round seemed old and dowdy now beside the new green lace which the beeches had put on so prettily. Through copse and spinney marched Bear, down open slopes of gorse and heather, over rocky beds of streams, up steep banks of sandstone into the heather again, and so at last, tired and hungry, to the 100-acre wood. For it was in the 100-acre wood that Owl lived. "And if anyone knows anything about anything," said Bear to himself, "it's Owl who knows something about something," he said, "or my name's not Winnie the Pooh," he said, "which it is," he added, "so there you are." Owl lived at the Chestnuts, an old-world residence of great charm, which was grander than anybody else's, or seemed so to Bear, because it had both a knocker and a bell pull. Underneath the knocker there was a notice which said, "Please ring if an answer is required." Underneath the bell pull there was a notice which said, "Please knock if an answer is not required." These notices had been written by Christopher Robin, who was the only one in the forest who could spell. For Owl, wise though he was in many ways, able to read and write and spell his own name, W-O-L, yet somehow went all to pieces over delicate words like measles and buttered toast. Winnie the Pooh read the 2 notices carefully, first from left to right, and afterwards, in case he had missed some of it, from right to left. Then, to make quite sure, he knocked and pulled the knocker, and he pulled and knocked the bell rope, and called out in a very loud voice, "Owl! I require an answer. It's Bear speaking." And the door opened, and Owl looked out. "Hello, Pooh," he said. "How's things?" "Terrible and sad," said Pooh, "because Eeyore, who was a friend of mine, has lost his tail, and he's moping about it. So could you very kindly tell me how to find it for him?" "Well," said Owl, "the customary procedure in such cases is as follows." "What does crustamony proseed cake mean?" said Pooh, "for I am a bear of very little brain, and long words bother me." "It means the thing to do." "As long as it means that, I don't mind," said Pooh humbly. "The thing to do is as follows. First, issue a reward. Then—" "Just a moment," said Pooh, holding up his paw. "What do we do to this? What you were saying? You sneezed just as you were going to tell me." "I didn't sneeze." "Yes, you did, Owl." "Excuse me, Pooh, I didn't. You can't sneeze without knowing it." "Well, you can't know it without something having been sneezed." "What I said was, first issue a reward." "You're doing it again," said Pooh sadly. "A reward," said Owl very loudly. "Write a notice to say that we will give a large something to anybody who finds Eeyore's tail." I see," said Pooh, nodding his head. "Talking about large somethings," he went on dreamily, "I generally have a small something about now, about this time in the morning." He looked wistfully at the cupboard in the corner of Owl's parlor. "Just a mouthful of condensed milk or what not, with perhaps a lick of honey?" "Well then," said Owl, "we write out this notice and we put it up all over the forest." "A lick of honey?" murmured Bear to himself. Or not, as the case may be." And he gave a deep sigh and tried very hard to listen to what Owl was saying. But Owl went on, using longer and longer words, until at last he came back to where he started, and explained that the person to write out this notice was Christopher Robin. "It was he who wrote the ones on my front door for me. Did you see them, Pooh?" For some time now, Pooh had been saying yes and no in turn, with his eyes shut, to all that Owl was saying, and having said yes, yes, last time he said no, not at all, and now without really knowing what Owl was talking about. "Didn't you see them?" said Owl, a little surprised. "Come and take a look at them now. Come and look at them now." So they went outside, and Pooh looked at the knocker and the notice below it, and he looked at the bell rope and the notice below it. And the more he looked at the bell rope, the more he felt that he had seen something like it, somewhere else, sometime before. "Handsome bell rope, isn't it?" said Owl. Pooh nodded. "It reminds me of something," he said, "but I can't think what. Where did you get it?" "Aw, I don't remember this." Oops, where'd my page go? "I just came across it in the forest. It was hanging over a bush, and at first I thought somebody lived there. So I rang it, and nothing happened. And then I rang it again very loudly, and it came off in my hand. And as nobody seemed to want it, I took it home and—" "Owl," said Pooh solemnly, "you made a mistake. Somebody did want it." "Who?" Eeyore, my dear friend Eeyore. He was fond of it. Fond of it? Attached to it, said Winnie the Pooh sadly. So with these words he unhooked it and carried it back to Eeyore, and when Christopher Robin had nailed it on in its right place again, Eeyore frisked about the forest, waving his tail so happily that Winnie the Pooh came over all funny and had to hurry home for a little snack of something to sustain him. And, wiping his mouth half an hour afterwards, he sang to himself proudly, "Who found the tail? I," said Pooh, "at 1:45." Only it was 11:15, really. "I found the tail." I love Eeyore happy. That's so cute. Oh, he's still happy. Okay. And that's the end of the chapter. Yay! So that was so much better for me anyway. I needed a break. Lots of reading. Lots of reading at work today, so it was nice to have a nice little break in reading. So, let's see. Whoops, where'd I go? There I am. Yay! Yay me. Let's start our music up again. Yay. We'll keep it quiet though so I can still talk. So thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it. It's fun to not read alone. I like being with my friends and just reading. Sometimes goofy stuff like Winnie the Pooh. Sometimes we'll read more brain work like The Art of War. Sometimes we'll read mysteries. We'll read all kinds of things. It'll be fun. So I'm so glad you joined me. Be sure and hit follow. Feel free to chat me up. I love meeting new people, and I'll try and get that poll up. I'll try and make sure and put Winnie the Pooh, the link to Winnie the Pooh, in the YouTube video when I post this to my YouTube. If you have any questions, you can always find me on Twitter, and you can go ahead and message me on Twitter. And otherwise, I will see you hopefully, if not tomorrow. Let's see, today is Wednesday. I'll try tomorrow, but I might play games tomorrow, so I'll be on my other streaming thing playing games. But we'll see. Maybe I can do both, because this was fun, and it's a nice short book. We can probably finish it up tomorrow. I don't remember how many chapters, but it shouldn't take too long. But I may just save some of the Winnie the Pooh for when I need a brain break, because sometimes it's nice. So thanks for joining me, everyone. I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming, and I'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.